lot of people, a good book is like the very best of good friends, the kind you never want to lose touch with. Perhaps that's better explained in a thought I came across the other day, written by Pulitzer Prize-winning author Isaac Singer. He said, "When a day passes, it is no longer there. What remains of it? Nothing more than a story. If stories aren't told, or books weren't written, man would live like the beasts, only for the day. The whole world, all human life, is one long story." One Juneau resident has contributed more than most of us to that long story. She's been honored as Alaska's Poet Laureate, has more than 300 poems published, and has written more than half a dozen books. Putting ideas and feelings down on paper are her consuming creative passion.
I want her to open that door with a crash, rush down the steps, embrace those lilacs like friends, long gone on a journey. Hug them and cry and dance in the yard and sing to the neighbors that everything beautiful comes again and again, that no one can be lonely who does not choose to be. And everyone will dance until the lilacs burst into summer, and only when we are tired will we stop to take a rest in a quiet time called winter. Well, poetry is definitely my first love, and it's my first form of communication, and I believe completely what Ezra Pound said, that poetry is the news that stays news. And even though I work in a news-oriented field, I know that it's the poetry that really is going to last. And to me, it's a question of looking at what I do from the eyes of a poet. It's the vision I have, it's what I see through the eyes of a poet that really matters. And that's my compelling motivation. But ever since I could put pencil to paper, I had been writing. And when I came to Alaska, I had really just started publishing. And the more time I spend investigating and struggling with the art form of poetry, the more I realize that what is essential is simply telling the story. A compelling subject in Juneau is the tragedy of the wreck of the Sophia, which of course happened almost exactly 70 years ago on the night of October 25th, 26th, 1918. In the long poem on why the quiltmaker became a dragon, right in the very center, I deal with this central tragedy. In the first dark of October 25th, in raging snow, Sophia rolled off the reef and sank. No one survived, no one. But they didn't drown. They died of exposure or suffocated in oil, along with porpoises and mures. The final conversation with Sophia went like this. Sophia, taking water and foundering, for God's sake, come and save us. Cedar, coming full speed, but cannot see on account of thick snows and taking heavy seas. Sophia, all right, but for God's sake hurry, water coming in the room. Soon after, just time to say goodbye. We are foundering. I will tell you very specifically how I work, and that is to get up early and to spend some time every morning writing in my journal. I always have a blank book, and sometimes it is an elegant blank book with a cloth or even a leather cover, but usually it's simply a steno pad, which is a very good size because it's light enough to carry around with me. And what I do is to write the date every day, simply to keep myself aware of the passage of time. And I start deliberately putting down whatever thoughts I have that might in some way lead, maybe not that day, but at some point, to a poem. And these could be simply individual words or phrases or images or concepts. But I start writing, and I write as much as I can. And usually, quite quickly, then I turn to the word processor and start playing around simply to see how some of these words appear on the screen. I am simply typing what is going through my head without consciously thinking about what it is I am working on. Actually, I have some of the galleys for the new magazine.
Okay.
Well, presently, I work at the Alaska Department of Fish and Game, and specifically, I work as editor of Alaska Fish and Game, the magazine that comes out every other month. At Fish and Game, of course, I lead an entirely different life. I am under very real time constraints since public communications, the section that I supervise, is a production shop. And so a great deal has to be done quickly. And yet I find that the same creative processes are at work. I think what poetry has helped me the most to do in relation to my work is to focus. One of the things I have learned from my job that helps me a great deal with my writing is a much sharper attention to factual information, whereas I would tend to be romantic in my view of animal species. I have learned through my job at Alaska Fish and Game that it is exceedingly important to be totally scientifically accurate. I would recommend working on a small newspaper as a way of learning what it is to deal with everything that goes into production. I think it's an invaluable experience, plus the fact that learning how to produce under pressure is very, very important. There's no point in saying, I'll write when I'm out of college, or when the children are grown, or when I can build a studio, or whatever. The point is to be doing it right now, to be doing it in the midst of everything, to recognize that writing is life and life is writing, and that there is no separation. And as I get further along in this wonderful experience of life, I realize more and more how important it is to detach and to gain as much of a 360-degree view as possible, and to understand that even what seem to be false starts in life have all had tremendous significance. And when I look at my poetry, I realize that. I see that a poem is any writer's attempt to enable somebody else to see something clearly. If I can help any reader to see any one subject, event, or experience even a little bit more clearly, or from a somewhat different perspective, I have succeeded as a poet, and I am very pleased. And the Lupin poem is a good example because it was something that I had looked at over and over and yet suddenly saw in a flash of illumination or a moment of epiphany. Lupins stand bunched by the highway, hitchhiking, but summer does not look back.